Welcome to the Prepped and Polished podcast, the podcast that empowers you to take control of your education. Featuring weekly interviews with influencers in the world of education, as well as tutoring tips, lessons, and updates. And now, here's your host, Alexis Avila.
Welcome back to the Prepped and Polished podcast. Make sure to join our community. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Instagram, YouTube. Just type Prepped and Polished and you'll find us. Also, make sure you go to our site, preppedandpolished.com. Sign up for our monthly newsletter. Have a question during the podcast? Submit your question to radio@preppedandpolished.com. Today's guest is Sebastian van der Schrier, a leading voice for those suffering from social anxiety. And he's host of Social Anxiety Solutions podcast on iTunes. It's a top podcast on iTunes. After several traumatic and tragic childhood events, Sebastian has battled social anxiety disorder since he was 11 years old. On today's episode, Sebastian talks about an embarrassing classroom experience that left him traumatized at age 11 and how he was able to ultimately overcome his social anxiety disorder and offer inspiration to people all over the world. Sebastian, thanks for coming on the Prepped and Polished podcast. How are you today?
You bet. Thanks for inviting me. I'm doing very well, a bit tired, but good. Thanks.
Excellent. Let's start off if you can share with us a little bit about your background and perhaps focusing on a few pivotal life moments that brings you here with us today as really a leading voice for overcoming social anxiety.
Right. Okay. Well, I suffered from social anxiety for a long time. It started when I was about 12. It got a lot worse when I was about 16, when girls came into the picture. And it really evolved into a severe social anxiety disorder, and it was really bad, where I felt anxious and nervous around everyone, to just about everyone, to a really high degree, and I couldn't be myself. Felt ashamed about myself. Felt that I was the biggest loser alive, and would hide in my room. When the weekends would come up, I didn't want to be in those social situations because I knew I was going to be anxious and uncomfortable. So sometimes I could avoid it, but when I couldn't avoid it, when I would go, I would drink, because that would be a great solution, because then I was actually a lot freer and more comfortable. I don't necessarily endorse that, but it definitely helped me kind of in those situations and dealing with it, because the anxiety was excessively. And eventually I stumbled onto some information that explained to me that what I was dealing with was a problem that you could actually overcome, and that problem was there because I had certain beliefs about myself and about the world and about other people, and that those beliefs caused me to feel that sense of inferiority and that sense that there's something wrong with me. And when I would start to change those beliefs, I could become calm, comfortable, and relaxed with myself and with other people. And there was just one problem with it, and one of the real key elements of getting to that place where I felt comfortable with myself involved facing my fears. And that was really, really, really scary. So,
oh yeah, it's always hard to do that.
It is for people in general, and for people with social anxiety, I believe it's horrifying. So, I was advised to make a list of the things that I was afraid of. It's kind of like the basics of cognitive behavioral therapy. Or at least it's one of the key steps. They call it exposures, where you make a list of the things you're afraid of in chronological order, and you start with the thing you're least afraid of, and you do that, you build up some confidence, and then you use that gained confidence to go to the thing that's next on your list. And that works for some people in some situations, but it doesn't work for everyone. And for me, it didn't really work for me. That is, one of the things I was really afraid of was talking to women, talking to girls rather, because I was 17 or 18 at the time. And so I forced myself to do that. Couldn't sleep for days beforehand, as I had planned to go and do that. And then with the help of someone who kind of pushed me towards the girls and had me say some scripted lines and ask for opinions and stuff like that. It was extremely awkward. But at the end of the day, I walked up to maybe 20 girls or groups of girls, and I felt actually more confident. I felt a lot more confident with myself and with the situation. I'm like, wow, this works. This is great. But then a couple of days later, I was back to square one, and I felt just as insecure about myself as I had felt before. And then, I tried all sorts of weird experiments. There's a psychological concept called flooding, where you do the thing you're afraid of most, and you really go to the extreme. Well, I and a lot of people with social anxiety, and a lot of people in general, you're afraid of losing face, of embarrassing yourself, doing something stupid, and standing out in a negative way. And so to force myself to do that, I bought the brightest red lipstick and I smeared it over my face and my eyes, and then went into the city to go talk to people and pretend like nothing is going on. And of course, everyone is like, what the hell is going on with you? And you're like the freak show walking through the city. And in the beginning, this was beyond, like the epitome of awkward. But after about half an hour, 45 minutes, I started to care a lot less. And after about an hour, I hardly cared. And I was like, yeah, I'm the man. Fantastic. I've solved my social anxiety. But then, a week later, most of it, maybe some of it has stuck. Most of it was actually gone. And, facing my fears took so much out of me that I just couldn't do it. I couldn't keep up with it consistently. But I had sworn to myself that I was going to keep going until I was comfortable and relaxed around anyone in any situation. And that eventually led me to, I was always studying self-help, psychology, reading books about it, doing different courses, NLP courses. And eventually I stumbled onto a really funny looking weird technique called EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. And when I saw that demonstrated on a YouTube video, and this is maybe in 2006, I think, I first thought that this must be a scam, because this sounds way too good to be true, because the idea was that it works where it works for most people where nothing else has worked, and it is a technique to rapidly neutralize stress, negative emotions, fear, shame, embarrassment, humiliation, anger. And I'm like, yeah, right. It sounds way too good to be true. But I was desperate enough to give it a try. And in fact, it actually didn't work in the beginning. But I kept at it because I did my research and I saw online hundreds of videos where people were teaching the basics of it, and I saw hundreds of testimonials, whole websites dedicated to it. I'm like, this is too big for it to be a scam. So I ordered the DVDs, watched all of that, and eventually I went to a workshop where they were teaching this technique over a weekend, like the basics of it over a weekend, and you then and there get to experience it. And then when I was at that workshop, you kind of work in, I think it's called triads, where you have three people. One is an observer, one is a client, and one is a practitioner. Well, as a practitioner, I saw the person I saw the person that I was working with release her fear in front of my eyes. She started with an intense fear. She did that weird tapping, and she's like, oh yeah, I feel a lot better. My fear's gone. And I observed as she worked with the other lady on her sadness, and she went from crying to feeling calm. And then when it came time to work with me, nothing was happening. So we called in the workshop leader, and then the workshop leader asked me a bunch of questions, because the problem with me was I wasn't tuned into a negative emotion. They would say, okay, well, focus on a negative emotion. I'm like, I don't have any negative emotions. What are you talking about? I'm fine. It just happens to me. But then when the workshop leader came in, he asked me a couple of questions, and I'm like, I think I'm like 18 or 19 at the time, or 20. I'm not exactly sure of the age, but he asked me some questions about dating, girls, relationships, sex. And as he asked those questions, that was what I was ashamed of most. And now I was talking about this in front of these women and the other participants in the group, so in a group setting, and I became massively embarrassed and ashamed and humiliated, because I'm like, no, this is my biggest secret, and I'm so ashamed. Nobody should know about this. And then he said, okay, now do the tapping. And then as I started tapping on my face, believe it or not, it sounds like a really good story, but as I started tapping on these acupressure points, I literally felt that shame and embarrassment dissolving. It's like a plug was pulled from a drain, and it just flushed out of my body. And within 2 minutes of doing that tapping, while I was verbalizing and talking about those things I was ashamed of, all that shame, humiliation, and embarrassment was gone. And I could now talk about it comfortably, and those emotions were replaced with a sense of calm and peace and acceptance. And prior to finding that technique, that EFT, I had been doing visualizations, affirmations, hypnosis, facing my fears, journaling, just about anything and everything I could get my hands on, and I had only made minimal progress. And today, in those couple of minutes, I made such a shift. Like, I felt that something had changed inside of me. I was a bit different. That after I found that, I was like, wow, this is so incredible. I got to find out how to use this to resolve my social anxiety. And that set me on a path to a long journey, working with a whole bunch of experts to help me overcome my challenges, because that single moment definitely wasn't the end of my social anxiety, but it was definitely something that inspired me to go for it. And I since invested all my money for a really long time on the best therapist and supervision, and I've been coaching socially phobic clients since 2009, and I've been free of my anxiety for years.
Wow.
And I'm lucky enough to feel calm and relaxed and connect with people and socialize and have a good time. So that's kind of what I'm sharing with other people now.
That's amazing. What's social anxiety mean to you? And what percentage of people suffer from it?
Well, the statistics say that in the U.S., between around 7% of the population suffers from it, and about 13% of the population suffers from it at some point in their life. But that's just what the statistics say, because the problem is a lot more people deal with it, but they're ashamed of it, and so they're not going to go look for help, because they don't want anyone to find out that they actually have anxiety. Most people or a lot of people have anxiety, but they want to hide it, right? I mean, if you feel uncomfortable, you kind of want to pretend that you're fine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Stand
so
in the back.
Right, exactly, or keep a cool face, or you just don't want to reveal that, because it's typically seen as a weakness, right? And we don't want to be seen weak, so we pretend that we're cool and calm and collected and everything's fine. But what social anxiety is, well, I'll try to explain it as I understand it, with my limited understanding, in a way that's maybe easier to understand. It's basically a fear of embarrassing yourself, fear of being judged, fear of being criticized, fear of being disapproved of. And you have these fears, and you learn these fears at some point in life, and because you had negative life experiences as you were growing up, and from that you created beliefs about yourself, the world, and other people, such as I'm not good enough, or there's something wrong with me, and people don't like me, and people are out to get me, and the world is not a safe place. Well, when you have those beliefs, those are the lenses through which you look at the world, through which you look at social situations, through which you look at other people. Now, if you look with those beliefs at a certain situation, it's not safe. It's not safe to be yourself. And so there's a perception of danger. And whenever there's a perception of danger, we have this built-in response in our brain called the fight, flight, freeze response. Whenever there's perceived danger, boom, that gets fired off. Adrenaline gets pumped through our veins, cortisol gets released, and it puts our body in survival mode. And that's what we experience when we have anxiety. So I guess,
Wow.
Does that explain what it is?
Definitely. And so when somebody's socially anxious, does that mean that when they're not in a social situation, they're not anxious?
It depends. It's different for everyone. Some people are only anxious when they're one-on-one. Some people are only anxious when they're in groups. Some people are anxious with all people all the time. Some people are anxious just in performance situations. Some people are anxious with people and also without people, anticipating social events. That's more like a generalized anxiety disorder that then also has social anxiety included in it.
Oh, wow.
So it becomes something that really dominates every area of your life because it's social interaction and other human beings, right? So.
And have you seen, does social anxiety exist in children, adults, men, women? Who suffers the most from it? Have you seen?
Well, I haven't seen it that much in kids. Though I'm not really surrounded by kids as much. I've got a 2.5-year-old daughter, but I live here in the Philippines, and this is such a different culture as well, where people are brought up very freely compared to the Western world. But typically, for most, no, that's not really true. I wanted to say for most people, social anxiety starts around 13, but that's not really true because for a lot of people, they're already anxious prior to that, but it gets worse when they hit puberty. But you see it from the moment they hit puberty all the way to, I'm working with a lady who's 59 years old at the moment, and I've worked with people even older than that. Like it's not something that goes away just by itself.
Wow. That's amazing. And I think I remember reading from your bio that you had some situations, traumatic events that occurred to you like at age 11. And
yeah.
So
yeah,
that may have precipitated the social anxiety a little later.
That kicked it off. However, it was more the like my dad died when I was really young. My mom was left behind with me as a 5-year-old and my little sis. She became emotionally distant. My stepdad showed up, who I hated with a passion, and he didn't like me at all. And I was placed outside of the house, and all of that stuff kind of made me more vulnerable to developing social anxiety.
Wow.
And then as that experience happened where my teacher made fun of me, who was my favorite teacher, that kind of kicked it off. But that was kind of more like how do they say that in English? Like the camel that broke, or was it like the straw that broke the camel's back or something like that?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So tell us about your website. It's social-anxiety-solutions.com. What will we find there, and how do you help others?
Right. Well, I've set my website up in a bit of a different way than the typical website because I like things to be very focused and not waste too much time. So when you get to my website, it's kind of like a book. So the moment you get to my website, I share a bit of my story, and as I talk, I start providing you with solutions. I relate to you. I share how it was for me. I share what I typically run into with clients. I come up with solutions. I teach you the tapping. There's a series of tapping videos, and kind of like as you move from chapter to chapter, if you will, each step you kind of shift something in your mind or release some of your social anxiety or learn about the tapping, become a bit more comfortable. So it's kind of like an education on how to release your social anxiety step by step.
Yeah, that's really innovative and effective, the way that you lay out your website and just kind of draw you in. And I love that, and relate to you. That's awesome. Nice. And your podcast, how do we find it? And tell us about it. and the types of guests you have, and what kinds of things you can learn.
Yeah, sure. So I'm very happy with my podcast because I'm just the random dude Sebastian who's 30 years old who finds this weird tapping technique. So I don't have as much credibility, right? But on my podcast, I interview psychologists, psychotherapists, coaches, consultants who are Western traditionally trained. So, cognitive behavioral therapy, all the Western traditional stuff, who have combined Eastern energy psychology, such as the tapping, into their practices and have seen their results like skyrocket. And so I'm interviewing them about topics such as how to overcome shame, how to release fear of rejection, how to accept being sensitive and celebrated, the challenges with being vulnerable, how to connect with people, how to overcome bullying, and many of these kind of topics. And I talk with them about, they will be sharing stories of clients that went through big transformations. They'll be giving their best resources, their secrets, their insights, their tips from 30 years of practice as a psychotherapist, and then their stories of what they learned from the energy psychology. Basically, it's just it's an amazing resource that at the end of the episode, my intention is that you feel inspired because you've heard actual solutions, and you're empowered because you've gotten some techniques that you can immediately start applying and start to feel better. And that's the show.
So
and that's
helpful.
That's Social Anxiety Solutions /podcast on my site, or you can find it on iTunes in the same name, Social Anxiety Solutions.
Awesome. And I'm glad that you learned techniques for overcoming bullying, because I was going to ask you, it's a growing problem, bullying and cyberbullying. There's actually 282,000 students are bullied each month in high schools in the U.S. A lot of them online. Have you learned any recommendations, tips for any teens who often get cyberbullied? And are there any resources out there that you know of?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're being bullied, okay, so there are a couple of things. Let me start off with a story that kind of helps out. So when I was the experience that you mentioned that kicked off my social anxiety, what happened was I was 11 years old and I was sitting in the back of the class and was throwing around pencils and pieces of paper, just being an obnoxious kid. And my teacher, who was my favorite teacher, I loved her like a mom. I even went to her house eating pancakes and stuff. She caught me, and I had to sit next to her so that she could observe me. And as I went to the front of the class and sat next to her desk, about half an hour later, the TV rolls in and we're going to watch some documentary. And the teacher goes to the back of the class so she can observe me. And then she yells from the back of the class, "Sebastian, move with your big Dumbo ears away from the television because nobody can see anything." And I was normally the kind of like the bully kid. I was the strongest in class, and I was excruciatingly mean. But I was bullying people, or I was just being the kind of like the class clown, and nobody would really stand up to me. So when my favorite teacher said that to me, like, I became tomato face, totally red, and everyone was laughing at me, pointing their fingers at me, and ha, Sebastian. And from that moment on, I was so ashamed of my ears. And if you see me now, you wouldn't really necessarily say that I have big ears. Maybe my head grew a bit, but if you see pictures from when I was 12, my ears kind of lean to the front. And so, yeah, it's a little Dumbo ears, I guess. But it became a massive thing for me. Whenever then people would talk about, physical appearance or dating or, like nose or ear or anything that to my brain was close to the ear story, I would start to feel anxious and I would start to get nervous. And if they then actually mentioned my ears, I would immediately become embarrassed because that trauma that I had with my teacher, the emotions, the feelings that were stuck in that trauma then got reactivated, and I felt all that shame and embarrassment. Well, when you respond to bullying, then it's fun for the people that are bullying you. And I was such a clear target because it was so obvious that I had a problem with this, that they would only have to, pick their ears and make a plane out of it, and I would become embarrassed. And it got to the point where I was like, you know what, I'm going to get my ears fixed. And then they can't do anything anymore, and, fine. And, being from a spoiled first world rich country problems, we my mom and I went to a surgeon and had a talk, and he said, okay, well, yeah, this ear, they're a little bit out of normal, so yeah, we could operate on that. And we actually had the insurance was going to cover it because I was suffering emotionally from it, also given my history and stuff. So it was set and the date was picked. And then when my friends teased me again about my ears, I said, yeah, well, whatever, I'm going to get my ears fixed anyway, and then you have nothing to tease me about anymore. And then they laughed, and one of them said, well, then we're going to call you Barbie. And I'm like,
oh gosh,
no,
you can't win.
Worse, yeah. But it shifted something in my mind. It's like, wow, hey, it's not about my ears. They just want to have something to tease me about. And I then also had a conversation with an older friend, and he said, yeah, they're just trying to get a rise out of you. They teased me for having small ears. When you respond, that's when they get you. It's like, see, he's responding, he's biting, so don't bite. That's a good first step. Then what you actually want to do is you want to become emotionally neutral to the bullying, to the teasing. And that's something that you can use the tapping for, the EFT. That's actually the main thing that you want to do. So the reason that you're being picked really is because there's some sort of fragility within you, and it makes it easier for them to pick on you. And what you can do with the tapping is you can address the reasons for why that is, and you can get to a place where where normally they might say something to you and you feel incredibly rejected or hurt and upset, and now when they say the same thing, you're just like, oh, whatever. It doesn't even hit my radar. And when that starts happening, so that's that's what happened for me. I didn't respond anymore to them teasing me about my ears. I didn't care anymore. And when you don't care anymore and the person is trying to bully you, they look like a dumbass. Yeah. So So absolutely. That's a good thing. And one important thing to keep in mind as well is, like, when someone is actually purposely being mean, like actually mean, that person is not in a very happy place. Because when you're high on self-esteem and you feel great about yourself, you don't want to put other people down. You want everyone to join your feel-good party. So
yeah,
and Alexis, the third podcast, I actually interviewed Tanya Prince, who's an EFT master, and we dedicate the whole topic to how to overcome bullying, and she's experienced it as well. So we have a conversation and we relate our experiences with it, and I think someone who has been bullied will find tremendous help in that, as well as specific exercises to take to overcome the effects of the bullying that that has on your life. And if you're listening to this and you are no longer bullied, but you were bullied way back when, and you still find yourself in situations where you respond with shame or insecurity or how you felt when you were bullied, this is a great episode to listen to. So that's
wow. And how do we find that one? Did you go to iTunes or?
Yeah, just go to iTunes, and it's the third show, and it's like how to overcome the negative effects of bullying. Or you can go to socialanxietysolutions.com/podcast/Tania, Tania.
Oh, cool. So what kinds of exciting things are you up to now?
Well, the podcast is exciting because I just started that a month ago, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, it's just a month ago, and
It's on the top of iTunes.
well, it's an important message that needs to get out there because a lot of the other stuff doesn't really work, and it's just important. And when people hear that, hey, this is technique, and this, by the way, this is just one of the techniques. It's this the main technique that we share. Um, is being used by these psychologists, and we hear these stories and we hear all these things that we can relate to. Hey, this is important. Other people need to know about it. So what I'm excited about at the moment is, this interview, being asked to share this message with more people. Like, I want to be on more podcasts and have a place where I can share this. And that's currently, along with starting webinars and writing a book, is what keeps me focused, business wise. Aside from my lovely daughter and my friends and stuff like that.
Fantastic. You've come a long way. How do you enjoy your life today, and what do you love most about the work you do?
How do I enjoy my life today? Well, I live in the beautiful Philippines, which is a really nice place to live, and I'm 30, and it sounds a bit like an old wannabe old man or something. But I used to party and drink a lot, and I don't drink anymore because it's pretty boring to me, and I'm more into meditation and meeting up with friends and going for dinners and salsa dancing, and we do outreach programs here for the street kids, and playing soccer is a big passion of mine, and badminton. Very active lifestyle, and travel here and there. And what was your follow-up on that?
And what do you enjoy about the work you do, helping others?
Right. Well, I'm enjoying that after 6 years, things are kind of starting to kick off, and it's really awesome to see that that message spread. So I'm getting more and more emails of people that share that their lives are changed because of the information, just like it was for me, and I'm just paying it forward what I have gotten. And it's really awesome to be part of that, to see that grow and see that expand. And I really enjoy my coaching sessions, and it's it's nice and rewarding to see someone shift and change. And it's not like they show up and they're ready for it, and to be a partner in that feels really good. Yeah,
it's amazing. How can we get in touch with you?
If you want to get in touch with me personally, you can just go to socialanxietysolutions.com/contact, or you can just go to my website and scroll all the way to the bottom and use the contact page there.
Okay. And are there dashes in between the social anxiety solutions, or not necessarily? Or
well, I think it links to my website, but it's social anxiety solutions, so more than one.
Oh, okay. Well, awesome. And to any teens listening, any piece of advice you can give them before they cross that journey from being a teen to being a young man or a woman? Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. It's an honor to give that advice. That's awesome. Have I gotten that old? So, yeah, sure. Okay. I think it's really important that you get your emotional health in order. So you want to be able to manage your emotions properly, because that benefits you in each and every area of your life, your relationships, your career, and the tapping is a really great way to do that. There are other tools as well. I don't want it to be just the tapping junk. You learn about self-help stuff. This stuff should be taught in schools, I believe. And then this is kind of wise advice I got from my coach. I'm working with my own coach and have been for the past 4 years every week. And I've gone through really big struggles. And she told me your biggest challenges hold your biggest rewards. And that's something nice to keep in mind, because you are going to go through challenges. It's going to happen, count on it. But those challenges are inviting you to up your game and move to the next level. And as you move to the next level, you're more resilient, you're happier, and life's just a lot better. So, and aside from that, don't take life too serious. Have fun. So, guess that would be it.
Perfect. So yeah, that's all I have for you today, Sebastian. Before I let you go, is there anything else you got going on that you want our listeners to know about, or?
Just when you're suffering from social anxiety, just go to my website. And like I said, it kind of reads as a book. And there's a ton of stuff for free. You can learn the tapping for free. I have a bunch of videos on there that teach you step by step in an easy way how to do it. And you can experience it for yourself. And you also find my mini book that I have there. You don't have to sign up for anything to get that. It's just on my second homepage. It consists of 3 homepages, page 1, page 2, and page 3. On page 2, you find 12 shortcuts to social confidence, and that's based on my almost 6 years of coaching socially phobic clients, what I've learned from all the people that I've studied under, and each step kind of gets you to feeling socially comfortable and relaxed faster, and they stack on top of each other. So I would say go to socialanxietysolutions.com.
Perfect. Sebastian, thanks for coming on the Prepped and Polished podcast. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. It was really nice to do this, and I appreciate the invite. Thanks, Alexis.
And this wraps up our show today with Sebastian van der Schrier. Go to www.socialanxietysolutions.com to learn about Sebastian's amazing work helping others overcome their social anxiety disorder. And check out his podcast. It's on iTunes, Social Anxiety Solutions Podcast. And make sure to be on the lookout for our next podcast episode, number 77. It will be a tutoring tips episode. Thank you for joining us on the Prepped and Polished podcast. Now go out there and take control of your education.
You've been listening to the Prepped and Polished podcast. For more information, check out preppedandpolished.com. Also, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening. Class dismissed.